Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Jay Miller.
And my name is Hazel Miller.
And we're the co-publishers at Book Hug Press. And it's our great pleasure to welcome you all to the virtual launch of Phantompains by Theres Estacion.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the land we're joining you from this evening has, for thousands of years, been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And it's still home to many diverse Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to live, gather, and work on this land. We also acknowledge that some of you in the audience are joining us from other places as well. And we encourage anyone who wishes to do so to please share where you're joining us from in the using the chat function that you'll find at the bottom of your screen.
So we've been looking forward to this evening for many reasons. First, because we're really excited to be launching Therese's beautiful new book with all of you. But also, today is Therese's birthday. So happy birthday, Therese. And while we obviously can't be together in person tonight, we can't think of a better way to celebrate with Therese the release of two things: the anniversary of her birth and her book's birthday, which is a great thing to be doing. We love launching books, and we're really happy to be doing this tonight. We also have some special guests joining us tonight, including musician Melissa Comeau, who's joining us from the East Coast, and one of our favorite writers, Tamara Faith Berger, who is a friend and mentor of Therese.
So before we turn things over to Therese, the birthday girl herself, and her special guests, we'd like to take just a quick moment to provide an overview of tonight's launch and the format that it will follow. But first, just a couple of quick housekeeping bits. Tonight's event does have live closed captions available. And to access the captions, you'll find also at the bottom of your screen a CC button, or closed captions function. And if you wish to access them, please just click that on and follow the prompts. Secondly, tonight's event is being recorded, and in the coming days, we'll make the recording available and share it through our YouTube channel. And now, a little bit on the event itself. We've got a great hour of fun planned for you. In the very first part, Therese is going to read a selection of poems from the book, and she'll be joined at that time on screen by Melissa, who's going to treat us all to some really wonderful music between each poem. After this set, Therese will then be joined by Tamara, who's going to lead a short interview, question and answer period with the author, discussing the new book. And there will be a bit of time set aside at the end of that to allow for some audience questions. So if you do have a question that you want to submit for Therese to answer, please do so using the Q&A button that you'll again find at the bottom of your screen. We might not have time to get to every question in the allotted time, but Tamara will do her best. And then following the Q&A, we'll go back one more time to Melissa and Therese for another musical set and readings, and we'll wrap everything up at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
And just before we get started, we'll just remind you that if you haven't already purchased your copy of Phantompains, you can do so at our website directly from us. Bookhugpress.ca is the website. We'll drop the link into the chat function as the event's going on, and you can order it at your leisure if you like. So now on to the event. It is our great pleasure to welcome the person we're all here to fet tonight, Theres Estacion. Therese has a few words of her own to share before inviting Melissa to join her on screen for the first reading and musical set of the evening. Over to you, Therese.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Jay. Thanks to everyone for being here tonight. I appreciate you all taking the time to take a break from your regular COVID programming and come and join me here this evening. I just wanted to do, my own land acknowledgement because this book was really written in several parts of the country, and I just wanted to thank the Indigenous peoples of this land. I wrote many of my poems in Mississauga, like Hazel said, it's the home of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations people, and also in the north, the land of the Dene people. And I really thank the Inuit, the Métis, and the Dene folks that I met there, and the other First Nations people that I met there. Much of the editing of this book was done in Montreal, which is protected by the Kanukiahaga people. The land gave me a lot of comfort when I needed it, and it also gave me the language I was looking for. So my writing is dependent on this land, and much of my writing is dependent on the land and its original people. So I'm a guest here, and I'm grateful for that. So I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Melissa Comeau, who I met in Yellowknife. Melissa is a music therapist. She's also an amazing singer and has the voice of an angel. Her voice always makes me cry. And I'm so happy and honored that she said yes to coming here and being the musical accompaniment, and giving my songs or giving my poems a little bit of the life that that a song can give to a poem. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, it's my honor to be here. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
So I'll start with the first poem. It's the first poem in my book. It's gone through many forms, but it kind of chronicles or summarizes my journey, the beginning part of my journey anyways. Once upon a time, the spectacle. A young woman flatlined herself into oblivion. Seemingly so. Really, she became the subject. A body made machine-dependent, tube down her throat, her hole sliced and closed, lines for the drip, taped to her skin, organ removed. Her body was dead, dying, then automatic pilot. One time, they brushed her tender gums so hard her mouth bled. Another time, they would not let her speak to her mother, father, sister, anyone. Apparently, she needed sleep. Still, she forced herself to stay awake, afraid she would never wake up again. Awakened nightmare syndrome. Later, someone asked how she was feeling. When she replied, psychologically perturbed, they took a syringe from the locked box and squeezed fluids down her neck, forcing her to rest for tomorrow when they will sit her up for the first time. After, all she does is sit, stare blankly at walls, the blurs, and the clocks. 11:30 turned into 12:34, into 1:41. 20 seconds past 3 a.m. When is lunch coming? Oh God, she was bored. At least they found a way to put her bed by the window so she could stare at a tree. And someone once washed her greasy hair, braided it beautifully for sleep. But let us fast forward a little past the sanitary purgatory to a time when her woman child would cycle in and out, post-coma, necrosis exposed, mummified fingers and feet. A spectacle outside a spectacle. A beast that wore her dead hide outdoors.
Dedicated to Theres Estacion. Thank you, Pa. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do major lift, the baffled king composes hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, Pa. I know you're watching. The second poem I'm going to read is from a collection of poems that were, so basically it's a part of, sorry, I'm kind of like, Melissa, you always make me want to cry, and also just remembering my dad during those times in Kelowna. So this part of a collection of poems that really reflect a bunch of cautionary tales told to me by my Nanay Melba, if you're watching, hello, from the Philippines. And I feel very lucky and privileged to know these poems and to be given to these poems as a gift. This one is called Aswang. Aswang. An aswang is a type of a bat that eats flesh. Aswangs are found all across the islands and vary in form and personality. One story of a known female aswang in Cebu goes like this. Sexy by day, at night she moves any way she pleases. Sometimes she ends up at the disco, where she laughs, magsayaw-sayaw siya, ug maghubog, dances and gets drunk. She laughs and pretends she's interested in your cock, excuses herself, leaves, finds a hiding spot, dismembers, hides her legs by the garbage, grows fangs and wings, becomes hideous, but keeps her perky tits. Ug maghuwat siya sa atok, and she waits for you perched on the roof. Paglakaw na nimo, when you leave, that's when she gets you. Hunt, swoop, crunch, and glug. Dayon, then, she puts herself back together again. Full. Trapuhan niya yang tutoy, cleans her tits, struts home. There is one way to catch her though, if you had the courage. This aswang has never figured out what to do with her intestines. So, if you ever find yourself walking out at night and see a long, moist cord swaying in the dark, run. Pero ako siyang atangan kay, but I wait longingly for her. I wish I was her. I wish I could put back together my dismembered body, snapping my bones inside, tucking in my loose muscles and nerves, folding in my fangs and wings, and salud sa akong lawas, daghan gyud og sundang. Inside my body, thousands of knives. I wish to be like her, the whore butcher with a swinging rectum.
Dedicated to Tita Agnes, until we meet again. The minute you walked in the joint, I could see you were a man of distinction, a real big spender, good looking, so refined. Say, wouldn't you like to know what's going on in my mind? So let me get right to the point. I don't pop my cork for every guy I see. Hey, big spender. Hey, big spender. Hey, big spender. Oh, spend a little time on me.
Thank you, Melissa. I think Tita Agnes would have liked that. And hello to the So family. I love you guys. Now I'd like to introduce my friend and one of my mentors, Tamara Faith Berger. Sorry. I'm so happy she can be here this evening with me. You've taught me a lot. You taught me a lot about writing, so I'm so happy that you're here, and also a lot about just kind of being fearless and going for it. So thank you. And she's also, I like to call her like a Toronto icon. She's also written several books, and Queen Solomon being one of them, Maidenhead, and is the half of the awesome event called Smutburger. So
thanks, Therese. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm so proud of you. Your work, like listening to it, it makes me cry. And Melissa, it was really great to hear your music too. And I'm really glad that you read that poem, the second one. You have a whole series of poems about the Abbat, the monsters, in your book. And I guess my first question to you is a little bit about the sort of interspecies kind of communication sometimes between the mythical creatures, the monsters, the white lady of the Philippines, you know, and the humans. And one thing that really stands out for me in this sequence of poems is this sort of notion of paying debt, a little bit paying debt to maybe the monsters themselves, or maybe the people, the ancestors, the people, the grandparents, the parents that came before. So I just wonder if you could talk about this idea of paying debt and or interspecies or intergenerational communication trauma, especially from a Filipina or a diasporic perspective.
I mean, yeah, I know in my family, elders, I mean, in sort of like a lot of Asian cultures, elders are really important. Ancestors are pretty important. In terms of paying debt, I know that one of the things that I aim to do is to give back and to give back what I've been given. Just thinking now of all the times I was in the hospital and I felt very alone. And just knowing that I wasn't alone because my uncle, my grandfather who passed, and my amma who passed, my great grandmother who passed, they were all there kind of rooting for me. And just knowing that they were there kind of made me feel confident, and also made me think like I was in a weird way like chosen to go down this path. Like it wasn't just a random thing. But I think I you know, I told myself that so I could make sense of the chaos and sort of like nonsensical kind of tragedy that was going on around me. But in terms of folk tales and cautionary tales, there's a folk theorist named Bruno Bettelheim, and he talked a lot about how folk tales really are super important because what they do is they really help the child process or digest like hard emotions that are happening that maybe the child doesn't have language for. And I remember when I first wrote Aswang, I thought, well, I was writing about what happened to me, and I thought, I don't really want to just write about my trauma. I think that's very hard and very boring. And I thought about the Aswang. I was like, oh my God, the Aswang, she's like an amputee. So I, like what Bruno Bettelheim said, like I used the Aswang tale and all the other tales as a way to process what I was feeling and what I had experienced without having to kind of feel like I was at loss. Like there was already like a whole reservoir of language available to me that I could access in these folk and fairy tales. So they were like an anchor for me.
Yeah, well, that all really comes across in that series of poems. And actually something you just said about you were writing about yourself, but you didn't necessarily want to make it all about yourself. I mean, I think that this book is narrative. It does have a sense of like an auto-fictional component to it, but it's also so beyond that in its poetry basically, but also in its sort of attention to syntax and especially its wild imagery. And actually in Aslan, you read one of these like really stand out images to me, which was the the whore butcher with the swinging rectum. No, is that, you read that, right? You did
Yeah,
say that. Yeah.
yeah.
That's one of like the most intense. It's so intense. Well, it's just the whole book is very visual. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of these sort of provocative images, especially this kind of visceral femaleness, I feel like that's on the page. Just wonder if you could talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to intentionally be sensual and erotic, you know, and that's why I think of your work and how important it is for me, because it's just when you kind of expose so much, like you really give the reader something that the reader may be too shy to like think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, what I experienced was very visceral as well. Like, you know, being in the hospital, I was just thinking about it the other day, like when I was in the hospital at Toronto Western, I had a couple male nurses or caregivers like wash me. And for me, it was like not a big deal because my body was something that needed to be washed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I kind of disassociated during those times because it's like there was no one else to wash me. So what was I going to do? Wait, you know, to be wiped. But after now, like that seems awful to me to have like a male stranger like come and wash me and like handle my body that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted, you know, the poems to reflect the way I want to kind of take ownership of my body again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it
Mm-hmm.
is, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you don't get to tell me how to write about my body. Like I get to tell me how I want to write about my body
Mm-hmm.
or the body. And I also didn't want to actually, you know, Sarah Peters is in the audience. Hi, Sarah. And we talked about this a lot. She's also one of my writing mentors, and she edited the first draft of my book. And we talked a lot about not saving the reader and how that's really important.
Yeah.
And I was very mindful of that when I was writing because it allows the reader to experience like the truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's
And,
what I think.
yeah, and actually something you mentioned just there about the medical experience, you know, and leads into something I wanted to ask you about. I mean, it's not specifically about Eunuch Female. So Eunuch Female is a later series of poems in the book that I think is absolutely brilliant, as you know. And it's a long series of poems about, for those of you who haven't read it, the medical system and mourning. It's about so much more than that. But I just wonder, like, I think what I'm curious about is not so much your indictment of things that might have gone on or the indictment of the whole medical system, especially for people who are undergoing surgeries, life-altering procedures. But I guess I'm wondering a little bit about how important the sort of the political or the inherent kind of political power or intent is in your writing. How important is that aspect to you? And perhaps especially around issues of disability justice.
It's pretty important to me. I think it became more important now. It's more important now. I think Phantompains primarily touches upon my grief and melancholia and my trauma. But it you know, I mean, as is here my partner, but we talk about this, the writer's revenge, and how sometimes you kind of feel silence, especially when you are like a little person in a big institution, and to be able to kind of say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to write about this one day. I think this is very important for other people to know about and for me to be able to voice. Now might not be a safe time to do it, but one day it will be safer for me to do this, and I'll do it well. That really, when I was writing Eunuch Female, that became very important because I wanted people to know that even as a patient, I had agency and I had good judgment. And a lot of the times I was almost treated like I was a child, or I was infantilized, not by everybody, but even if it's just by one person, like that has a huge impact. One person, you know, I had somebody when I was in rehab threatened to put me on a sleep schedule. And that was very harrowing for me. Thank God for my parents for being there for me as advocates. But when you are in an institution where everything about your identity is kind of like put aside and someone tries to dominate you, like it's very easy to be dominated. And it becomes like a struggle to remind yourself, wait a minute, like I'm an adult. You can't put me on a sleep schedule. Like, what is this, right? And I think I wanted, and a lot of disabled people or writers who have disabilities talk about this a lot, like that we are also critics. We can also critique. We can create, we can critique, we can get angry, and we can stand up for ourselves, and we can demand. And that's really important for me to voice out.
I have one more question for you, and I would love for people to ask some questions, and I will read your questions after. So I'm just letting you know, we have one more question for Therese. So I would love to talk just a little bit. I'm glad it's already come about, this notion of sort of like not, Sarah Peters' notion of like not saving the reader, and this kind of visceral, erotic way of being in your body and talking about your body. And so I'd like to just sort of ask my last question about sex. I feel like sex in the book is really incredible. You know, like there's parts, it doesn't fill the whole book, but there's parts. It's really memorable. Some really amazing images, some amazing verbs, you know, I've never heard of associated with sex before, and I really like them. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the welcoming of sex or the rawness in a certain way of the sex in this book. I feel like also it sort of touches these sort of like darker, quote unquote, darker areas like fear and the unspeakable almost, and also aspects of, yeah, control, healing, lots of different more, I don't know how to say it really, but yeah, lots of fun kind of ways of thinking about sex too.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want what happened to me, which was the hysterectomy, and my questions about whether or not I could have sex again, or whether or not like I was like a you know, a person that was desired or could be desired again or could give pleasure and receive pleasure. I didn't want that to be taboo. And I think that's often taboo. And I think I told myself, if you do that, then you're going to be in more pain. So it was really difficult for me to make that decision because I'm very aware of like my upbringing and how my parents and maybe, you know, Ezra's family would feel and my family would feel. But I also trust that they really appreciate art and good art. And I think being honest and truthful about what I'm afraid of and what I worry about, you know, that I think makes good art. And I wanted to write something that would allow people to kind of really get to know me and get to know, you know, what I was feeling and the questions that I had. And what happened to me was very raw and visceral and really disturbing. So and a lot of it, some of it was really regarding like sex and my body. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so moving, all the parts where it deals with sex. It's amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not just about sex, it's really about longing, right? Like a lot of it is about longing and longing for what I lost and what I think I might lose. So I think that's a really important part of the human experience is that longing.
I'm going to check the Q&A. Is there any, okay. an anonymous attendee asks you, who are some of your favorite poets and how have they influenced your art and book?
Well, two of my favorite poets are here tonight. We have, Sarah Peters and Brecken Hancock, who edited my book. Oh my goodness. Like, this book would not have been this good if it wasn't for Brecken. Anne Carson, I would read Anne Carson and then I would look at my work and be like, yeah, it's not, my work's not good. I gotta figure something out here. Someone introduced me to Gloria Anzaldúa, and her poetry really resonated with kind of like that diasporic voice. So Gloria Anzaldúa is one of them. Brecken introduced me to Eduardo Corral. So reading Eduardo Corral's work, Slow Lightning, that really helped me as well. He's not a poet, but he wrote a book called 365 Tao, Deng Ming Dao. So I really love his reflections on Taoism. So he was also someone who influenced, there are a couple poems that in the book that really reflect that kind of like the slow movement and like the brevity of Taoist teachings and Taoist sayings.
And you use them in your epigraph.
Yeah, I used them in my epigraph. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the other epigraph that you have, the Herminia Menyes?
Oh, so she wrote a book called Filipino Folklore, and she was introduced to me by Marigold Santos,
okay,
who is the artist whose image graces the front cover. So she is a scholar, but she writes like a poet, right? And I really love sci-fi. Like I'm reading Frank Herbert again. I'm reading his 5th book of the Dune series that my cousin Jordan recommended to me. I remember reading Philip K. Dick a lot when I was a kid, and a lot of writers write like poets, and I like that kind of language that they use, because I didn't go to school to study to be a poet, so I just kind of I took some classes and here I am. But I would say Marquez is one author whose work really resonated with me growing up. So yeah.
Here we have
and Emily Berry. Sorry, Emily Berry. Yes, more recent. Yes.
What kind of food and drink did you consume when writing the book?
Oh, all different kinds, I guess. I don't know. You know what? I ate a lot of sweets. Some of the poems are really hard to write. Mm-hmm. So donuts, cakes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, smoothies. It was a really big deal for me to get out of rehab and like make a smoothie for the first time. I was so proud of myself. I was like, oh my God, like I can make a smoothie. So smoothies, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, there's 2 really great questions that I would love us to get to, and then we're going to go back to some music and reading. So the first question is, from Paula Nevins, can you tell us about your infusion of Visayan language throughout your poems? How was this fusing important to your practice?
Oh, hi, Paula. Thanks for the question. It was really important for me because I'm not fluent in Bisaya anymore. So even when I was writing, like I would double check with my dad, and also my granddad, my Ipo, who lives with my parents and I was living with my folks at the time. It's really important for me to infuse that because it's a really cool language, and it's a language. So I grew up in Cebu, and I would spend my summers in Gihulngan, which is the town my dad's from, and I wanted to preserve the feel of the folk tales that were told to me in that language. It's really different saying it in Bisaya and saying it in English. So when I wrote it all in English, there was something lost. I have a poem called Chanak, which is about a baby vampire. And when you say it in Bisaya, it's funny. But when you say it all in English, it's not as funny. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to at least capture the feeling of the work or of the folktale in my language and share that with people.
And it was actually really great to hear you read it. It was great. I think one last question is from, and I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but Gosia Rutkowska. She says, to say I love the book is an understatement. Therese is a good friend and her bravery and talent amaze me. I am wondering, who would you like to read this book? What audiences would you like to reach?
Oh, hi, Gosha.
Gosia, sorry.
Anyone who wants to read it would be my first answer. It would be really great to have young Filipino or Filipinx kids read this. It's weird because it's one of those things where as a disabled person, I wouldn't necessarily want someone to recommend to me a story or a movie about an amputee because I live the life, I know the life, but at the same time I would, so that I could see myself. So I can't say if you're an amputee, you must read this book because our experiences are so different. But I guess, yeah, I think the Filipinx community, I would really love for them to read this book.
Yeah. Thank you. So great to talk to you. And thank you everyone for your questions you asked. So now Melissa is going to play a little bit again and Therese will be reading.
Dedicated to Ezra, who's the best. I call you when I need you and my heart's on fire. You come to me wild and wired. You come to me, give me everything I need. Give you a lifetime of promises and a world of dreams. You speak the language of love like you know what it means. It can't be wrong. Take my heart and make it stronger. And in your heart I see the start of every night and every day. In your eyes I get lost, I get washed away. And in your arms I could be in no better place. You're simply the best. You're better than all the rest. You're better than anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart. I hang on every word you say. Oh, tear us apart. Honey, I'd rather be dead. Oh, you're the best.
Thank you, Melissa. EF2. Waiting for her amputations, eunuch female calls lover, was left again for the mountains. L calls every night except for Thursday. On Thursday he parties. Eunuch female doesn't care. Cares. There are other things to worry about. 2 dates. A, leg amputations. B, hand amputations. Her holes are never aroused anymore since she has been infantilized by everyone who sees her. It's not their fault. She is in a motorized, totally unsexy wheelchair that has only 2 speeds, worm or slug, both asexual beings like her. At least her dead feet are gone. Instead, she has stumps, engorged, scabby stumps that need to be trained to withstand extreme pain and shape themselves slim. She's instructed to wear liners coated with silicone. They will help your stumps shrink so they can fit into your prosthetics. Don't worry, they hurt to put on at first, but then it's just like putting on eyeglasses. You'll see. Eunuch female tries to wear her liners despite the pain. You have to get used to the pain. You can't be fitted for prosthetics with swollen stumps. Every morning they come in the hospital room and check her stumps. Every morning they will look at stumps and say, "Your stumps are healing nicely." Eunuch female wants to scream. Stop fucking calling them that. Training her stumps hurts. Putting the liners on hurts, and they squeeze her stitches. Skin stitches, vein stitches, muscle stitches, scabby stitches. Thank God for the drugs. She's given lots of drugs for pain that feels like crucifixion. Her favorite is nortriptyline. The first time she took the pills, she felt like copulating gelatin. Sister phones her that night. "How's it going?" Eunuch female. "I can't talk right now. I'm on drugs." Sister laughs. "That good, huh?" Eunuch female wonders if she can be on nortriptyline tomorrow, and the next day, and so many days after. Naturally, she was only allowed to have it for a week. The other drugs were not as nice. They gave her vertigo and haze. During the day, eunuch female works hard to keep her shit together. Keep her shit tightly together while exercising, eating, therapying, crying. Keep her shit together while talking to God and smile, smile, smile. Be rehab hospital's favorite little disabled darling. Smiling at the public while rolling down the hall at slug speed. Last thing she wants to do is complain. She wants to grow up, get out of there, be sexy again with skinny stumps. Be ready for lover, not be ashamed of fat, gross, drugged up loser stumps, and gross, scabby, leaky, gangrene hands with scary, hard blackened mummy fingertips and ugly iodine-stained fingernails. The sooner she complies and smiles, the sooner she can give everyone a boner again. Stump. Cut down a tree. Stump. Saw a leg below or above knees. But if you touch, if you caress your sawed leg, the sawed tree, matter beats. EF 5. It has been 2 years and eunuch female can do 2 very important things. Wipe her own ass, drive. Lover escapes again, this time to north of 60, hoping to start anew. Eunuch female follows him desperate for more than sex. He obliges unwillingly. Willingly, again. A hopeful adventure on Taiga Rock. The aurora is thick with green particles and they fight often. Often they spoon. Often she's alone and waits and watches the fox burrow and travel across the ice road while he skis the pain away. When she feels like mold, she drives onto the frozen lake, takes her dead uterus, and places her in the passenger seat. Last night, Al wondered again if it was his fault. Was it the dirty lube? The butt stuff? No, so don't stop making love, she reminds him. A sun dog interrupts and shines on her flaccid uterus. All 3 suns seem real and steady with heat. She pockets her uterus and slowly walks to a part of the freshly plowed ice. She peeks into the patch and tries to figure out how deep the freeze reaches. The wind scrapes the fissured flecked lake. Uterus says out loud, "They said only 2.9 out of 1 million people get the bacteria." EF. Fusobacterium necrophorum. Uterus. No one knows where you got it from. We are a miracle. Remember? Remind Al again. EF. Sure. Uterus. Well, at least you don't want to kill yourself anymore. EF. That's even more tiring. At home, lover calls her and asks what kind of chips she wants and how much ricotta to buy for the lasagna. The birthday card he gave her sits on the table. It reads, "Through wind and snow." Outside, the light pushes past 5 p.m. again. Soon, the sun will begin to strong-arm the snow and stay. Eunuch female holds uterus up to the window and checks for specks. A black raven interrupts them and flies. Something new cycles. A rock waits for a billion years, waits for them to arrive, gives them dreams.
Dedicated to Theres Estacion. Love you, Mom. Do you have enough money to make your rent? I can send 100 on Thursday. Do you have enough socks? I can knit a few pair. It's giving rain on Sunday, so put the bucket by stairs. It's giving rain on Sunday, so put the bucket by stairs. Some kind of mother, some kind of mother, the kind that despite anything she'll always pull through. How you doing, honey? Is work okay? You'll be working a job you'll love someday. It won't always go the way you want it to. Just always know that I'm proud of you. Just always know that I'm proud of you. Some kind of mother, some kind of mother, kind that despite anything she'll always pull through. Some kind of mother, some kind of mother, the kind that despite anything she'll always pull through.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, Mom. For my feet, for my fingers, for my uterus, all I can offer is a memory. They were full, they were ecstatic, and in flux.
Dedicated to my sister Anne, always and forever.
Wow, what an amazing, amazing event this has been, Jane. I have just enjoyed it so much. I'm certain that everyone in the audience tonight feels the same. Just a beautiful, beautiful event, wonderful readings. And Melissa, your music has just been so moving and touching, and the interview with Tamara and Therese as well, just, so fantastic. Thank you all so much. So we're back though, we're kind of the bad guys. We have to sort of start to wrap things up. I'm sure, that's, it's hard to do because it's just been such a lovely evening. But before we say some thank yous and goodbyes to everyone, we'd like to first ask you, Therese, if you yourself have any parting words for your wonderful guests here tonight.
Yes, I'd like to say thank you for everybody who made the time to come. I, have people from my family come, people from Ezra's side come, my friends, my family from the Philippines and all, different areas of the world, my mom and dad, my colleagues, my work colleagues, my new colleagues, my old colleagues. This book really came to be because of the people that are here to support me. My friend Laura, who's here, she's part of our social distance bubble, she's here. My partner Ezra, who had to endure so much, and like Ezra really supports my writing, and it's nice to kind of get that blessing from your partner and to write about them in such like a hard way. And really, I'm grateful for Ez for that. I'm grateful for you, Hazel and Jay, for making this happen and for saying yes to this book. Like, you guys are kind of like the fairy godparents of this book. Like, I cannot imagine this book doing as well without the both of you, and you're really TLC. This book wasn't just written by me. I think so many people came together for this book. Sarah Peters, my first editor, Brecken Hancock, Marigold Santos, who did the cover. Like, thank you to Manny and Marcy as well for allowing me to edit the book in their home. Thank you to my friends in Yellowknife who supported me, who are here tonight as well. And to my mom and dad and my sister, my bedrock. And they're not here physically, but I know they're here, my uncle, my ama, my ancho, who they're the reason I think I'm alive. So, but yeah, and the people at West Park who took care of me, all my doctors. So this is really like a big community effort. So I thank everybody for that.
Yeah, it's very true that we're unmuted. It's very true that when you hold a book in your hand, it's hard to see sometimes the huge community that is involved in it, right? And so it's very moving, actually.
Yeah, thank you so much for those beautiful words, Therese, and allow us please as well to thank you so much for trusting us with not only your words, but how much of you is in this book. And it was really important to us to take care of that story as much as we could. So, and it's been a tremendous honor from the first moment that I had the opportunity to meet you when you were just finishing up at U of T. And I knew the first time I laid eyes on these poems that they were incredibly special. And it's been a real honor of ours to be able to work with you and to help bring these poems out into the world and into the hands of readers. And my goodness, we've had an incredible turnout of people here tonight, all here to support you and your wonderful book.
Yeah, so huge thanks for everybody to coming out tonight, for sure. And a big thanks to Melissa and Tamara for joining us tonight. And nobody can really see him, but there's a fella named Alex Spears in the background who's been helping us with the tech, and we'd like to thank him. And we also just want to take a moment to thank the funders that also allow us to do what we do, which includes the Canada Council for the Arts and the Ontario Arts Council and the Department of Canadian heritage, who without their help, then things like this can't happen. And the risks we like to take with books just wouldn't be the same. So.
And lastly, we would like to thank, of course, all of the wonderful people, the many, many people that have joined this event tonight. Of course, we all know that we're, still very much in the midst of this pandemic, and we're not able to be together in person the way we would so want to be for such an occasion. But I'm so grateful that we do have these opportunities to join together in these virtual spaces, and somehow or other they still feel intimate. Even though we're not in the same room, they become a very intimate space, and this has tonight been a very intimate and very moving event.
So with that, I think we're going to say goodnight. I'll just say one final reminder that you can order your copy of Phantompains directly from our website. Hazel's been dropping the link into the chat function, but you can also just go to bookhugpress.ca and type the book's title into the search bar, and it'll come up right away. And I think sadly, this brings us to the end of our evening. Thank you so much to everybody for coming. It's been a really lovely night welcoming this book into the world.
Yes, and congrats and happy birthday, Therese.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got to throw a party for people. Amazing. Yay. Awesome. And thank you, Tamara and Melissa. My God, thank you. And thanks.
Indeed. Well, everyone, thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and be safe and be well. And we look so forward to when we can all once again be together in person. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.